Well, let's welcome in the management of Aadhar Housing Finance. They are with us now. The RBI MPC, of course, is tomorrow. Decision will be out. Housing Finance is one space which, of course, I think has got the cleanest and the longest runway and the most steadiest runway in terms of growth, unlike consumer finance or MFI or what else have you. Rishi Anand is MD and CEO at Aadhar Housing Finance. He's with us. Rishi, good morning. Good to have you with us here on CNBC TV18 as always. Prashant this side. How's the quarter sort of panning out for you, Rishi? I'm talking about the third quarter relative to Q2. Is it as steady? Is it a lot of talk out there in the market about a bit of a slowdown at the margin, etc. Have you seen any of it in terms of offtake, credit offtake?
Great. So, morning everyone. First thing first, Prashant, Nigel, Surabhi, it's a pleasure always to come back to your channel. And before I get into answering your questions, I must congratulate CNBC TV18 on completing successful 25 years. Congratulations to all of you and to the channel and to the viewers.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much.
Great. Okay, so let me give you a little flavor of what is happening at the industry and what is happening at Aadhar. Versus quarter one, quarter two, we grew our AUM at about 21%, disbursement at about 18-19%, profit after tax at about 16-17%. While I can be quoting, a great deal of numbers on quarter three, but I would say we are on better footing versus quarter two. That's the indication I can give. And I think your opening statement answered all the questions, saying that this is one of the most safest and the most stable, industry to be in. Housing finance, especially after the PMAY 2.0, which formally got launched on 14th of November, has started seeing a lot of traction, seen a lot of movement in the demand, as I would say.
Mr. Anand, so give us some color. I mean, of course, the second quarter was really strong for you. I'm just going back and revising the numbers for our viewers. AUM growth was almost 21% year on year. Even quarter on quarter, it was up about 5%. Net interest income had a very healthy up move as well. Some sense, full year growth, not just FY25, but given this momentum in the housing market, maybe even FY26, what's a steady state number that looks very achievable to you?
So, Surabhi, the way we look at the next 3 years, if I were to put at some numbers around 3 years, we are looking at a comfortable 18 to 20% disbursement growth, which will result in about 22 to 24% growth on AUM. NIMs will be very stable at about 8.75, 8.8, while we recorded 9% in the quarter that is under question. But 8.75 is a stable state that we are looking at. So yes, the industry and Aadhar are in for good times, and I'll keep coming back to the PMAY 2.0, which targets the EWS LIG segment. Majorly 80% of the target happens to be EWS LIG, and that's the play area for companies like us.
Hi, Mr. Anand. Good morning and good to see you. And could you tell us what is the current incremental cost of funds versus your average cost of funds? If you could give us a couple of numbers on that. And also, I think a lot of your liability is floating. So whenever the rate cuts come about, you all will be in a good position. Explain that to us as well.
So, Nigel, our YTD cost of fund as we speak today is at about 8.4%. So very comfortably placed. There is a 20 bp hike that has happened over the last 7 months. And from here on, we see, the cost of fund going stable or down, depends on what happens tomorrow. Sorry, I missed your second part of the question.
I think 80% of your liability is floating,
yes,
right? So
yes,
when the cost of borrowing goes down, you all will be in a good position. How much of that will you all retain? How much of that will you pass it on?
Okay, so 80% of my borrowing is floating, 80% of my asset is floating. So it's like for us. So whatever comes in is moved back to the consumer. Depends on what is the quantum coming in. If it's like a 5-7 bips, obviously it doesn't make sense to do that whole exercise, the high OPEX exercise. And if it's substantial, upward of 25 bips, it will definitely be passed on to the consumer.
Okay. Rishi, the expectation out there is no policy cut, but maybe a CRR cut. If there is, say, a CRR cut of, say, 15, 25 basis points, what will that mean for your cost of funds?
So the way, Prashant, it works for people like us is, we have our borrowing spread across either on a quarterly rest or a half-yearly rest or an annual rest. The moment the cuts happen on the banks change their MCLRs, which will have a I would say, a lag of a quarter. And the moment that happens, and based on our rest, the moment it is passed on to us, it is eventually passed on to the consumer. So it might be, if I were to do a door-to-door window, it might be anywhere between 3 to 6 months.
3 to 6 months. Got it. Rishi, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us. It's always a pleasure having you with us here and
Thank you so much.
speaking to you and getting a quick sense of, so steady as she goes. And Q3, that is October to December, turning out to be better. That's the indication that Aadhar is getting in terms of offtake, etc.